We've looked at theories about Disney villains, so now it's time to do the same for their computer-animated counterparts. Although their villains are as legendary as classic Disney, Pixar has created plenty of compelling villains over the years, like Sid, Syndrome, Randall, and Otto. And for every villain, there are at least a couple of fan theories ready to be analyzed. From the strange to the ordinary, from the simple to the complex, we're here to look at Pixar villain theories to determine which have the Pixar seal of approval and which could probably use a rewrite. Hey guys, I'm Brad with WickedBinge, and this is Pixar Villain Theories, BS to Truth Bombs. First, we'll be dissecting the theories that it's safe to say aren't accurate. Whether they contradict the source material or were debunked by Pixar themselves, it's clear that these theories are bullshit. Sid's name is a reference to Disney. Our first theory originates from Reddit user The Rambling Mammal and focuses on Pixar's first villain, Sid Phillips. The author suggests that the name Sid is short for Sydney, which, if you look closely, is itself an anagram of the word Disney. The theory goes on to claim that this wasn't an accidental reference. Instead, this was an intentional creative decision on the part of the film's director, John Lasseter. Lasseter had worked at Disney years prior and was fired by the company only a few years after joining their animation department. So Sid isn't just a destructive kid, according to this theory, but instead a way for Lasseter to make fun of his old bosses. His evil actions, destroying toys and making his creepy creations out of them, could be a commentary on the Disney studio. At the time Lasseter was employed, they tended to rip films out of his hands and make them more their product. While Sid's full name is in fact Sydney, the real-life aspects of this theory make it too outlandish to fully buy. It doesn't make sense for Lasseter to poke fun at Disney when the first Toy Story was being financed by them. So that's too silly and petty for us to buy into. Realistically speaking, it's more likely that Sid's name was just a funny coincidence, as no other members of the film's production crew have backed up this claim either. Sid is a bully who likes to take toys apart. A subtle piece of commentary on the Walt Disney Company is something we just don't believe. Moving on, let's examine the theories that have a few nuggets of truth contained inside them, but otherwise have too many issues to get behind. These theories are full of holes. Syndrome was working with the government. One of the more popular Pixar villain theories has to do with the plot of The Incredibles and its antagonist, Syndrome. Coming from Redditor Honeybee Hound, this theory claims that Syndrome worked alongside the government agents who were tasked with keeping an eye on the superheroes. Syndrome helped them for the sake of business, while these agents helped so they didn't have to worry about the heroes anymore.
How do you think I got rich? I invented weapons.
This is why the agents seem to not know Syndrome's island or the murder of most of the supers, even though they should. While we must admit that this is one of the more creative theories we'll be looking at, it unfortunately starts to come undone when you compare it to the events of the movie. First, it's up for debate as to whether or not Syndrome killed all the heroes. While we do see many marked as eliminated in the movie, it's never made clear whether or not these are all the heroes left in the movie's universe. Given the events of the sequel, we think it's far from all of them. It's also not clear the extent to which the government knows about Syndrome's plot. For all we know, they were completely unaware of these events until after the movie. Alternatively, they did know on some level and were investigating the matter. Since they are relatively minor characters, either one is possible. As we said prior, this is a very creative theory, but the evidence doesn't match up with what's presented in the movie. Syndrome working with the government is just as likely as the two having no involvement, and it's because of that fact that we consider this theory to be bunk. Chef Skinner inspired Charles Muntz's talking collar technology. Time for a crossover. This next theory is actually a smaller part of the larger Pixar theory and connects the villains of both Ratatouille and Up. After the events of Ratatouille, Chef Skinner is now well aware of the fact that animals can communicate just as well as humans. What villain could benefit from this knowledge? The adventurer Charles Muntz. Somehow, Charles comes across this discovery, possibly from rumors shared across the world, or he may have met Skinner. This leads to Muntz becoming intrigued by animals being on par with humans, prompting the creation of the collars that allow his canine companions to communicate.
Speak!
Hi there.
This theory is creative, but sadly the timelines do not match. Up takes place in the present day. Ratatouille is more unclear. It's never explicitly mentioned in the film, but considering the technology, it seems likely it takes place sometime during the 1960s, several decades away from the events of Up. This also doesn't factor when Muntz could have begun working on this tech, as we know from the film that he had has disappeared from the public eye for a long time. Regardless, the timelines don't add up, and even disregarding that issue, it seems strange that Muntz and Skinner would even interact with each other. A chef and an explorer? They're not the type to be interested in each other, so we also don't buy into them being acquainted. Overall, while Skinner and Charles might be a pretty dastardly duo, the idea of them being friends and aiding each other seems unlikely, even in a world full of talking mice and dogs. Now it's time for the theories with a little more meat. They might not be completely accurate, but they at least have more going on. In a nutshell, these theories are possible. Randall was Andy's monster. From the Super Carlin brothers on YouTube comes a theory that connects both the Toy Story and Monsters, Inc. franchises. It suggested that Randall, the main villain of Monsters, Inc., was Andy's monster when he was a child. While it seems kind of random at first, there are a few elements that do connect these characters. For starters, we see a doll of Jessie in Monsters, Inc., so we can safely say that these worlds are connected on some level. 2. In a promo image for the film's prequel, Monsters University, we see a door that looks very similar to the door in Andy's room in the first Toy Story. Finally, there's a moment in Monsters, Inc. where Randall blends into the background, and it just so happens that this area matches the wallpaper in Andy's room. So there has to be something to this, right? Well, yeah and no. While we do think these references bring both franchises together, it's a leap to say that this all means Randall is Andy's monster. There's no true indication that door belongs to Randall, and it could very well be a door that just so happens to look like the one in Andy's room. After all, this was just promotional art and it isn't seen in the movie. We feel this same logic could be extended to the wallpaper that Randall blends into. A blue background with clouds feels like something a normal kid would have, and not just Andy. We think that there could be more to this theory if it was given a re-examination, but as it stands now, it seems unlikely that Randall was Andy's monster. Unlikely, but not impossible. Sid became a garbage man to save toys. In Toy Story 3, there's a cameo of Sid Phillips, who is now an adult. Since we left him in the first movie, he's gone on to become a garbage man, still living in the same neighborhood as he did in the original movie. It's a cute blink and you miss it gag, but Redditor, London Garbage Man, suggests it's a hint that Sid has evolved greatly as a character. While he seems like an average garbage man, he's actually taken up this job as a way to help toys. Rather than taking toys apart, he finds toys discarded by their owners and gives them a second lease on life. We've looked at this theory before in a video all about Toy Story theories, but we think it's time to give this one a re-examination. To start, while you could say there's no genuine hint that Sid has changed as a character, we think there's more of a chance here that Sid has indeed turned a new leaf. It's certainly unlikely that he would go back to harming toys. Besides seeming like an understandable evolution of the character, this is also the first theory that does have some input from Pixar. A producer on Toy Story 4 commented on this theory, and while he did unfortunately say it's not true, he did say it sounds good enough to be true. So while it might not have been the intended direction for the character, the fact that people at Pixar actually seem to like the theory does mean it might eventually be considered actual canon. Who is to say Garbage Man Sid won't show up to save the day in Toy Story 5? Okay, that probably won't happen, but the chances are higher here than for prior theories. Now it's time for the theories that are definitely possible, or should we say, these theories are probable. Chick Hicks lost his sponsors. Chick Hicks was the main villain of the original Cars, but when he returns in the third entry, it appears that his racing days are well behind him. He's a highly skilled racer, so what gives? Well, a theory from Redditor, Stupid Universe 731, might shed some light on the reason. To put it simply, Chick Hicks left the racing scene because he lost all of his sponsors. Following his crash of the King in the first film, all of his sponsors dropped him, and no new sponsors were willing to take him in.
What's wrong with everybody? Ow!
Without them, nor his fans at his side, he was forced to stop racing and took up a new profession as the host of a race show. It might not be the most dramatic fan theory, but sometimes the answers to the questions we seek are simple. And seeing as there was no attempted effort at informing the audience of what happened to Chick Hicks after the first movie, this seems like a pretty reasonable assumption. Chick Hicks is all about fame and the spotlight, but if he loses an element of his fame, in this case, his sponsors, then it totally makes sense for him to abandon racing and try to find a new way to accumulate attention. As we said, this theory isn't quite as complex or out there as many of the ones we've covered in this series, but there can be reason found in simplicity. While it's never been outright confirmed, this seems like a logical reason for Chick Hicks' absence from the speedways. Finally, we've reached the theories that are backed up by Pixar, or simply have too much evidence to discard. These theories are 100% truth bombs. Lotso is an evil analog to Woody. We've covered this theory before, but we like it so much much that we think it's worth another look. From Redditor, Itchy Rabbit, this theory argues that Lotso is more than just an evil teddy bear. When you look more at him, you start to see that he's in fact a foil to Woody. When you examine both characters, there are certainly more than a few similarities. They're both toys that feared abandonment and saw their owners as their entire lives. But while Woody takes pride in his friends and looks to the future, Lotso shunned everyone in his life and focused so much on the past that it has completely altered his judgment. The villain being a foil to the hero is not uncharted territory as far as Pixar is concerned.
What are y'all doing? Running back to your kid?
In their very last movie before Toy Story 3, Carl and Charles had a lot of parallels. It's a classic way to challenge the hero, and it's a formula Pixar loves to make use of. Besides the apparent similarities in Pixar's history of using this technique, the thing that adds truth to the theory is that the filmmakers themselves admitted it was the case. In a commentary track on the movie, the crew says outright that they intended to make Lotso an analog to Woody. It doesn't get much more concrete than that. While it might not seem like the case, this cowboy and teddy bear have far more in common than either would like to ever admit. But real quick, before we get to our next entries, if you're enjoying this video, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button and notification bell. We ask because we'd really appreciate the help getting to our next milestone, and we have lots more videos we'd love to share with you. Thanks a lot, guys. By and Large was created by Syndrome. By and Large, a giant megacorporation, plays a small but nevertheless crucial role in the events of Pixar's 9th film, WALL-E. They are ultimately responsible for the Earth becoming such a cesspool of trash and filth, leading to the human race needing to evacuate the planet if they are to continue life. However, one popular Pixar theory suggests that By and Large's villainy extends to many other corners of the Pixar universe, most notably The Incredibles. By and Large was actually the creation of Syndrome, who created the company as a front for many of his business enterprises. That would most definitely explain how they went from selling yogurt to making robots. His Omni-droids were also the beginning of future robots created by the corporation, such as Wall-E and Eve. Beyond that, many other pieces of Syndrome's tech are used and later refined in Wall-E. For example, the character Go4 seems to have an updated version of the zero-point technology Syndrome had created. We also never really see where all of Syndrome's equipment is coming from in the film. We know it's his creations, but we don't know what company was behind it or anything like that. Just like we don't know about this detail, we also don't know a lot about where By and Large came from. Who's to say Syndrome didn't create them? We haven't even mentioned that both the creation of By and Large and the events in The Incredibles happened in the 1960s. It sounds crazy, but it seems like By and Large was created as a means to get rid of the superheroes. After Syndrome died, the company's goals changed to a different and more long-term type of villainy. Considering all the connections between them and how well they fit together, this theory is easily our favorite and the biggest truth bomb of them all. Alright guys, that's it. Let us know in the comments section if you agree with our ranking and tell us what we should cover next. Remember to hit that notification bell and binge more of our videos. But most importantly, stay wicked.